Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our monthly webinar, and thank you for joining us today. This is Amber filling in for Ayaka, who is on her way to Japan. As you know, this webinar targets district test coordinators and other assessment coordinators who oversee statewide assessments and accountability systems. The webinar covers just-in-time, high-level, need-to-know information. As a reminder, everyone joining today is muted, but if you have any questions, please type your question in the Q&A box. We have posted our presentation as a document in the chat, so you can download and follow along, or it will be in there shortly. For accessibility purposes, we are reading from a script, and our presentation is being recorded. The recording script and Q&A will be available on our SharePoint site following the webinar. At the end of this webinar, we will unmute you to participate in the post-webinar discussion session. The session is a place for you to reflect on the webinar, exchange successes or challenges and ideas with other DTCs, and to ask questions to other DTCs and to us. As always, we will start with some department updates. First of all, Ayaka and our entire team would like to thank everybody for the collaboration and support you provided throughout the 25-26 school year. We couldn't have done our jobs without you. We also wanted to let you know there has been a change in the report card preview window due to the IC data availability. The report card preview window will now be open July 15th through the 29th. With the IC upload file due on June 19th, we realized there was not a way to provide a preview window before the end of June. To help ensure data validation runs smoothly this summer, please coordinate with your IC coordinator and ensure someone is on hand this summer to verify information as needed. Also, mark your calendars for the pre-release webinar, which is scheduled on August 13th. This release will cover all of the assessment results and school identification status. This year, our team has worked together to analyze the systems we have in place and make informed decisions based on what is and is not working, rather than simply continuing what has been done in the past. With this in mind, we reviewed data from the needs assessment and participation in our various communications outlets and realized there were some notable gaps. We want to ensure that the right information is getting to the right people. So we're implementing some changes to our communication plan. Therefore, this will be our last monthly assessment webinar. Moving forward, we will continue to provide just-in-time information through our monthly newsletter. We will also be adding monthly opportunities to meet with the assessment team to get your questions answered and collaborate with other DTCs. These will be similar to our current after-webinar conversations. Our plan is to host the monthly meeting shortly after the newsletter's release to allow you the opportunity to read the information in the newsletter and then bring any questions or ideas you have to the monthly conversation. In addition, each assessment coordinator will be creating a yearly schedule for their assessment-specific webinars. These schedules will outline the dates, times, and topics for each webinar and should be available sometime in August. We are hopeful this change will allow others involved in assessment administration, such as school coordinators and school leaders, to attend and get information relevant to the assessment or assessments they work with. Stay tuned for more information, and we appreciate your understanding and open-mindedness as we implement these changes. What questions do you have so far before we jump in to our other content? All right, I do not see any questions, so we will Move on to ISAT and IDEA. Austin, if you want to take it.
Good morning, everybody. As a reminder, please be prepared to verify student information if we come across any discrepancies when moving through our data processing. We need your assistance to ensure the correct student is getting the correct scores assigned to them. This helps us get our data out publicly as soon as possible. If a student's name, EDUAD, or birth date as recorded in an assessment system doesn't exactly match what we see in IC, we cannot move forward with processing that student's assessment data. This is common when a student's preferred name may be loaded into an assessment system such as TIDE rather than their legal name as reported in IC, or simply from a typo with birthdays. If there's an error like this in your data, we will call to make sure we have the right information and that your data is as accurate as possible. If you plan to be out of the office in July, please leave alternative contact information in your voicemail or out of office email so that we can find someone to connect with. All data matching errors must be reconciled before the participation rate appeals window can open. And speaking of that, the ISAT IDEA participation rate appeals window opens July 13th and closes on July 20th. Please take the time between now and then to read through this year's participation rate appeals guide linked on this slide. Students enrolled in your LEA from April 17th through May 1st who did not take one or more required ISAT and/or IDEA tests are considered non-participants and appear in the participation rate appeals application. Participation appeals with required documentation may be approved by the department if the student appears in the participation rate appeals application due to an IC or enrollment error, they had a long-term medical absence stretching for the entirety of the state testing window, or they have a homebound placement due to a medical need. As a few other reminders, testing population requirements are set in IDAPA, and SDE staff cannot make special exceptions to the participation criteria. Specifically, we are not permitted to approve appeals for documented generalized anxiety disorder, even with the doctor's note. All appeals must be accompanied with current and proper documentation before they can be processed. Appeals submitted without sufficient documentation will be returned so you can provide additional documentation. Please continue to monitor the application even after you've submitted your appeals. Also, please keep in mind that the appeals window is only open for 1 week. If you'll be out of the office on vacation during this time, please make arrangements ahead of time for someone to submit appeals on your behalf. After this window, participation rates are locked and no exceptions can be made. Please be sure to read the guide as there are some updates from last year. One major change is the removal of the extenuating circumstances as an appeal reason. Due to the inability to fairly and consistently apply this reason, we've decided to remove it. We understand that circumstances arise that are out of our control and for many reasons would not be beneficial or possible for a student to take the assessment. These circumstances should be rare and would likely be able to fall into the 5% of non-participants that are allowed. Please reach out with any questions about the appeals process. As we reviewed data from the 2026 Summative Administration, I pulled out trends of considerations that could be helpful in supporting the test window in the future. First, begin rostering and adding accessibility features at the start of the school year. This helps support having more time to ensure students are set up correctly, allows teachers to administer interim assessments to see data, and gives students a chance to practice with the test interface. Along a similar note, use the available practice and interim assessments to provide students with opportunities to become familiar with the interface and practice applying their learning to assessment items. Helping students see the items in a different modality than resources already used through curriculum or other programs give them a chance to apply their knowledge flexibly. When thinking about a well-run test session, active monitoring is key. This means that the proctor is actively and consistently moving around the testing space, monitoring students and occasionally checking the interface for test progress. Proximity goes a long way in helping students stay on task and avoid potential item breaches. This is a lot for one person, so when possible, utilize an observer to help the test administrator. When incidents of high security concern arise, please call us. This includes any kind of potential item exposure or cheating. When it comes to the use of unauthorized devices, the more detail, the better. And if we can talk it through with you, we can typically get most of the information we need right away. The incident log is then available to capture all the information after we discuss what our next steps need to be. When submitting improprieties, resetting a test deletes students' current responses and they would have to start over. This is used when there is some kind of misadministration that we need the student to test again. It also requires family permission if they have started a PT assessment or answered more than 5 items on a computer adaptive assessment. To reopen a test allows the student to go back to the last section of the test. This should be used in rare situations when a student was unable to fully complete their assessment, and they should only return to the items needing that additional time. This most often is the case for an ELA PT when a student submitted before they finished typing their response. These two are confused or misunderstood, so we wanted to provide some additional information now, and we'll bring it back up next year as well. Cambium is developing a new tool to help support educators in dissecting assessment data with a goal of providing suggested next steps and connections to additional resources. Cambi for Educators is an intelligent assistant that unifies assessment data, student demographics, instructional resources, and other tools, reducing tool fatigue and enhancing instructional impact for teachers and administrators. Cambi will help break down assessment results in a digestible format and provide suggestions based on that information. There will be pre-proposed questions, or educators can ask their own questions to Cambi. From there, Cambi for Educators will then give recommended instructional next steps and draw from resources like Tools for Teachers. It will also have the functionality to instantly customize assessments based on the results of an assessment for individual students using Cambium's authoring platform. All of these features will be provided to pilot users during fall of 2026. Feedback will be collected at the end of the pilot with an anticipated full release of the feature in spring 2027. If you are interested in learning more about the pilot or know you are interested in participating, please reach out to me to learn more and secure a spot. There are only a limited number of users available to pilot this tool. And off to Stacy.
Good morning. The time's finally here. We've said goodbye to the IDE assessment with Cambium, but we're glad to welcome the change to dynamic learning maps as our new IDE test. As was mentioned last month, the test is still the Idaho Alternate Assessment, or IDEA, but now the platform we are using is DLM. Excuse me. If you hear IDEA, think Alternate Assessment. On the other hand, if you hear DLM, also think alternate assessment. It's going to be a great change for students who participate in that assessment. The requirements for who qualify to participate in the alternate assessment do not change moving to DLM. Students identified to take the IDEA will still need to meet the current requirements. Those requirements will stay the same. We are still required as a state not to exceed the 1% cap of participation. Please make sure that your IEP teams are mindful when they're making that determination about students participating in the alternate assessment. Are you hoping to get a head start on the changes that are coming? If so, take a look at these resources. They're a great place to start and are available anytime. These are self-paced and you can click into them and do them at your own pace. A number of people have reached out about dates for the in-person teacher training that is coming up. I realize this is not a group of teachers, but this information is now available, and if people reach out to you, please share it with them. Final details such as actual locations and registration links have not been finalized for all sessions, but should be soon. I wanted to make certain that dates were provided and general information for planning and consideration were provided to you. We will provide the finalized information through email and announcements as soon as it becomes available. Please remind your teachers that they must complete the required test administrator training prior to the session. Additionally, there are 2 summer virtual trainings, IEP goals based on essential elements, and test administrator training. Please make sure to put August 31st on your calendar for the DTC specific Q&A with DLM. This will be a great time to ask your questions, to get help with anything that is confusing while you're uploading your teachers and students. If you have building testing coordinators and they will be doing rostering at their own buildings, please provide this information to them as well. They are welcome to participate. The registration is open now for these trainings, and you can find it on the Assessment and Accountability event calendar link included in this slide. Also, please share the information for other trainings with teachers as you interact with them. That's it for ISAT and IDEA this month. What questions can we answer for you?
I don't currently see any questions. When they wait another moment or so.
If there aren't any questions, then we'll move on to Sam with IRI.
All right, good morning. This is Sam. I am here to bring you the information you need for the month of June. Missy is on vacation this week, so I will be covering her today, or her today. I want to highlight some important dates and requirements in Amira's platform for the coming school year. The fall IRI testing window will be the month of September, which is a change from last year. In Amira's platform, you must label September as your beginning of year and May as your end of year. Please ensure these are labeled correctly. August is available for progress monitoring. However, it is important you label August as progress monitoring and September as your beginning of year. You may not be able to do this now because it is too early, so make a note of it for the fall. You are invited to an Idaho-specific virtual assessment webinar. This webinar will be delivered by the Idaho Department of Education and should not be confused with the trainings that Amira will deliver this fall. This 60-minute virtual training is designed for district testing coordinators and elementary building principals and will provide a high-level review of key lessons learned during the first year of Idaho's Amira IRI implementation. Participants will receive important updates and guidance on topics such as accommodations and accessibility supports, assessment resets, and the test incident process, score appeals, and common implementation challenges experienced during the 25-26 school year. The training will also highlight best practices for preparing students in testing environments to ensure Amira can accurately hear, record, and score student responses, including recommendations related to devices, microphones, testing locations, and student behaviors that can impact assessment quality. The goal of this session is to help districts and schools avoid common issues, improve testing consistency, and ensure students receive the most accurate assessment results possible. This training will be on Monday, August 10th at 11 a.m. You may register for this training by clicking the blue button on the screen on your PDF, and this training will be recorded for those who cannot attend. One of the frequently asked questions that we get at the department is, how is the listening comprehension subtask scored? It is important that in the retail section of the listening comprehension section, it is not just simply speaking in complete sentence. Students need to be able to retell the story, including these important story elements. They must name the main character, identify the setting, recall at least 2 major events, and include the conclusion. And that is all I have for IRI. Are there any questions that we can answer or I can answer? Quiet in the question box today.
One's just soaking it in today.
Yeah.
We did get one question. Do you know when the paper pencil scores will be updated in Mira?
Yeah, they should be available. I actually knew I was going to get asked that question. Let me grab the date for you and I'll pop it in the chat. Give me just a moment.
All right, I do not see any other questions, so I think we are on to Elpa.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. So this is Carrie Ann. We'll go through the English language proficiency assessment information. So first up is annual certification trainings. So summer is a great time to get ahead of the annual certifications. All WIDA trainings are currently available in the WIDA system, so you can enroll and complete the certification courses anytime. Note that the screener online course will be moved to a new format beginning September 1st. However, that content in the course will remain similar. So if you complete the course prior to September 1st, it will still count towards the annual certification. Once complete, your annual training is good for 1 year from the date of completion. So next. Oh. Sorry, this is like the buttons again, same slides. There we go. So the access appeals window, it's a little later this year as compared to prior years. Hopefully it will be moved up again next year. But please know that the appeals window will be open 10 business days from June 15th to June 26th, which is coming up unbelievably quick. So we'll be working on providing an on-demand training video that you'll be able to access from the main page of the application itself, which is what you are seeing on screen. From IC, select the Access Appeals application. Once on the main page, the link to the pre-recorded webinar will be on that main page. So please use the time between now and next Monday to compile any necessary documentation. Yeah, make sure everything shows up. I don't know why that keeps not working. I know. Sorry. There we go. Anyway, sorry about that. So please make a note of the dates of appeal, again, June 15th through June 26th, end of day. So why would you want to submit an access appeal? The main purpose is for all L1, LE, and VW students. A district can appeal to add or remove a student from the accountability formula if any of the following criteria apply to your student's situation. So primarily this is for a domain exemption, which is the special education deferred, listed on screen. Also, if there is any medical reason, a medical emergency, similar to the ISAT student must have been absent for the entire testing window. Number 3, this is a slight difference. You'll notice that the ISAT, because there's 100% testing required for all ESL students. So we do still have the extenuating circumstances listed here that you can appeal for. Again, documentation is critical, and these appeals should be extremely, extremely rare. There is also information about being misidentified, but hopefully if you are submitting any last minute ELMS appeals, there should not be that many misidentified students. If you have questions about that, please do let me know. So if you have ELMS appeals that need to be entered into the ELMS system, please do the best you can to get them in by the end of day this Friday. I'm not expecting that to be a heavy lift. Hopefully there aren't many. But the reason for this is that the state will be receiving the final file from WIDA this week. Once we receive that file, we will then match the WIDA file to the information in ELMS. So if the information does not match, I will then probably call you so we can determine the reason why the information is not aligning and take any necessary steps to make the changes or document information. So the cleaner we can keep ELMS, the better and quicker and more efficient everything will be So thank you for doing that work and for checking as needed. This is just a heads up in case anybody is interested, but there is a couple upcoming training opportunities. The first is the WIDA annual conference. So I think the early registration is passed, you have June 7th. So, but that's okay. I think there are still places and room available. Please do visit the conference website to take a look at the program, the speaker bios, and to save your spot. It looks like it's going to be interesting this year. So also there's the 5th annual Summer English Learner Institute. This is June 18th and 19th. Hopefully this one you are already signed up for. I believe this one is sold out. So anyway, but if you're going, I'm looking forward to meeting you. We have a couple days of really fun and engaging activities. So I hope to see you all there. And that is the information I have. Let me know if you have any questions.
I'm not seeing any.
It is okay. If you come up with questions later, you know where to find me. So please feel free to call anytime.
Awesome. So this is Amber again. I'm going to cover both the SAT and NAEP. Rather than pausing for questions in between, I'm just going to share both assessment updates for you, and then we'll do our final questions at the end. We will continue to offer the PSAT and MSQT to 10th graders and the SAT to 11th graders for the 26-27 school year. To clarify, both are optional programs. If your school requires students to participate in the PSAT and NMSQT and SAT, we encourage you to use the assessment system inventory to evaluate the needs and goals of your program. All right, we'll move on to NAEP. I'm going in for Christy today. Over the summer, NAEP is taking a deeper look at some of the tools offered that could provide real value to you and your colleagues. Today, we are focusing on NAEP item maps. Item maps are tools that help educators and families understand student performance based on years of NAEP data. For each assessment, example questions are mapped onto the NAEP scale for that subject, with more difficult questions at the top of the map and easier questions at the lower part of the map. The map provides a description of the knowledge or skill needed to answer each question. Here's a simplified example of what a NAEP item map could look like. Let's take a look at how to actually read one of these maps using a simplified grade 8 math example from Idaho's 2024 data. The scale runs from 0 to 500, and questions are organized into 3 achievement level bands: basic, proficient, and advanced. Each question is placed at the score point where a student can likely answer it correctly. So here's the key idea. A student scoring a 310, go ahead and click for me. A student scoring a 310 could likely answer all the questions at or below that point on the map. That means you can look at any student's score and get a pretty concrete sense of what skills they've demonstrated and what's just out of reach. That's what makes this tool so useful in conversation with teachers. It connects a number to actual content. Now that you've seen how to read the maps, let's talk about what to actually do with them. NAEP item maps can be a practical tool for PLCs and back-to-school PD. There are 4 angles worth bringing to your teachers and other educators. 1, content. Which skill on the map are we explicitly teaching, and which ones are we glossing over? 2, equity. What does the gap between subgroups' scores tell us about opportunity to learn? Rigor. How often are students practicing the multi-step reasoning required to move from basic to proficient? And next steps. If we targeted just one skill cluster this semester, which would have the most impact? All right, so that is all for SAT and NAEP. I also think that's all of our content. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish out. We'll pause for final questions and then move into our after webinar discussion. Yeah, so we will be removing this slide before we put the final version up, because as a reminder, this is our final monthly assessment webinar. So we usually take a break in July, just since that is the down month kind of for everybody. And then next year we'll begin using our new plan. So to clarify, there is no more second Wednesday webinar. But be on the lookout for more information coming soon about what webinars we will have in place. Are there any final questions before we move in to our open discussion? Do we know when the testing calendar will be out?
It should be out soon. It should be published. I'm just waiting for IT.
Awesome. Yeah, so we finalized our version. We're just working out a few things and then it should be posted probably within the next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next week.
Can you share a timeline for the ISAT RFP process?
We are working on that right now. So as we knew from this past school year, we had released an RFP for the delivery system. Through that, we realized there were some components that just needed to be readdressed in the RFP to make it a smoother process. So we have been doing that. We are looking for a tentative release of that again in either early to mid-August, just depending on how quickly we move through that timeline of going through the reviews of everyone internally and then getting it posted. So that's kind of the anticipated release of that again. That will then determine when we have that all wrapped up, which my goal would be to have that new contract for our test delivery vendor kind of in place by the new calendar year. So that way we can potentially do some pilots with that if it is a new vendor, get some opportunities to use that system a little bit in the spring, see how it works with our item vendors. We are also considering doing an RFP for science assessment as well. And so we are working on the logistics of that one to determine when is the best time to do that. All of our components of the ISAT system are in need of going through that process, just best practice for how long we maintain our contracts before doing an RFP. So all of the components are in consideration. We're just kind of trying to strategically plan out when we're going to do each of them. So we're not doing them all at once because that's a lot. Not just for me to manage 3 different RFPs, but to also make sure that the rollout to the field is strategic and has enough support. So yeah, great question. Like I said, we're in the process of the delivery system specifically, and that one will, again, hopefully be decided by the new calendar year. So be on the lookout for more information come around August, September, and we'll have more updates for you.
I don't see any other questions, so thank you for joining us. Those of you who want to hang out for the after webinar discussion, we will begin allowing you to talk or make yourself come off of mute. And those who are leaving us, we appreciate your time today and we hope you have a great summer.